Welcome back, AP. And no, to quell some of your concerns, I'm not currently driving right now, which would be probably one of the most messed up things ever. I know they say don't text and drive, but I'd imagine flipping and driving, probably just as bad. All right, so let's not try to take up too much of your time. We're going to wrap up the really radical phase, get into the directory phase, which we only talk about for like 5 seconds, and then we get after it when we get to the Napoleonic phase, right? And remember, I'm going to start sending out all the links to the prezzies that you don't already have. I'm going to start sending out a lot of different stuff. I'm going to get you your study guides probably tomorrow, okay? But we'll get there soon, okay? Now, anyway, really quick, though, the Reign of Terror, which is where we left off in the last flip, right? With its Committee of Public Safety and Georges Danton and Robespierre actually like lining their own pockets and actually being really extreme and murdering people that they believe to be counter-revolutionary and all this other stuff, creating a planned economy with the bread of equality, total warfare, emergency socialism, right? As all this stuff begins to spiral out of control and we get to all these like 300,000 people arrested, 40,000 people sent to death by guillotine, right? The reason why it was originally brought on was to help stop counter-revolutionaries that were actually popping up in the countryside. Large groups of people were beginning to rebel against the revolution itself. They thought that Robespierre and Danton's Committee of Public Safety was kind of just turning into another version of the monarch himself, kind of a dictatorial power that would kill when necessary and didn't really have the ideas of the original revolution in mind. Because when you really look at this whole thing, the ideas of the original revolution, of the 1789 revolution, of setting up basic rights for humans and trying to actually make a more representative government have spiraled completely out of control and has turned into, the sans-culottes trying to like make sure their bellies are full, but then also some of these other people vying for power at the same time, right? So the Jacobins are going to do a lot of stuff, too, that's going to be counterintuitive and kind of even go backwards. They're going to heavily suppress women's rights. They're going to tell women that they're actually not allowed to meet in public or participate in, government debates. They even began to storm nearby women's clubs. Remember we talked about the Jacobins as a club, right? And within that club, there are the Girondists, the Montagnards, right? And then there's a lot of other clubs like the Cordelay and the Thermodorians are another club as well, right? Which we'll get to them in a little bit. Now, the Jacobins are going to end up suppressing women's rights. They're going to start storming these areas of, like, revolutionary women. Remember Olympe de Gaulle? She wrote the Declaration of the Rights of Women. She was actually captured at one of those meetings, and she was herself guillotined as well during the Reign of Terror, right? And then also, it changed how time was kept, right? They changed how time was kept. They turned the entire year into 10-day weeks and only 12 months with 10-day weeks, and they renamed all the days of the month, and or days of the week, and then they also even renamed the months themselves, right? So they're also going to like change the units of measurements. They're also going to do this like attempt at de-Christianization, right? And de-Christianization was where they tried to basically suppress, excommunicate, destroy, and alleviate any type of organized, large-based religion within France, right? So, particularly moving away that of Catholicism and doing a lot of different things like closing down churches, stripping land from monasteries and convents, seizing the tithe, grabbing onto anything that they can get their hands on, right? So, de-Christianization was actually where they tried to strip basically France of its religion, right? So the Reign of Terror is going to extremely push forward. Nationalism is going to explode. People are actually end up going to not fearing their government, but thinking the French are the best and most powerful people in all of Europe, and we must show them these things and blah 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 blah, which turns into a giant trend in postmodern Europe or in early modern Europe during the 1900s. Actually, helps lead to World War I, right? They're going to begin to actually have a draft. They're going to draft all unmarried men to the military in 1794 to send them to the front to fight these coalition armies, right? And then one of our best representatives of the revolution itself, showing the extremeness of it, right, is actually this guy, Jacques-Louis David, right? And Jacques-Louis David actually did a lot of amazing artwork that helped represent the revolutionary fervor. He did the one about the tennis court oath, right? The rave scene with the tennis court oath. He painted that. He did one on Napoleon, which was actually really important that we'll talk about here in a little bit. He painted that. This is another famous one he did that actually symbolizes the Reign of Terror very well. Remember Marat? Remember the guy that lived in the sewers? Good old Marat? This is how he died. Stabbed to death in one of his medical baths by a woman who was impersonating a prostitute, right? So, that's right. Yeah, see him writing. He's in his medical bath that he had to spend days in because of that skin disease he got from living in the sewers. Yeah, this itself represents that reign of terror. The fact that even the men that are in charge of the terror themselves are not safe, right? So, like, he actually was a Montagnard in charge of it. And this, of course, is another very prominent, like, image of the revolution. This is Lady Liberty leading the people. Now, some of you are going to be like, Mr. Terror, this is from the revolution of 1830. This is insane. Why are you showing us this? This isn't from that revolution of the 1789 to 1850. This is true, but it's just a good representation of how art, even in France, became obsessed with the revolution itself, right? Marie Antoinette is going to be guillotined in October of 1793. Marat's going to be assassinated. Actually, Jacques-Louis David even actually drew this. He actually drew a sketch of Marie Antoinette while she was on her way to the guillotine, right before she stepped on the executioner's foot. And the last word she said was, "I'm sorry." All right, so now, anyway, but continuing forward, just, things are getting insane, right? So, and not to mention the fact that Chapter 2 of A Revolution in Saint-Domingue, right, Toussaint L'Ouverture actually steps up and tries to lead these slave revolts that are popping up in their most prosperous colony, right? This is Toussaint L'Ouverture. He is a Haitian, former slave, self-educated Haitian soldier, right? No, Saint-Dominguean soldier at the time, speaks fluent French, and was actually recruited by the British and the Spanish forces to keep slavery rebellions going, right? He actually became an officer in the Spanish military. So, rights were given back to free people of color, and the National Convention even outlawed slavery to try and quell the violence that was going on in Saint-Domingue. So, they outlawed slavery to prevent the colony from falling into British hands, and Toussaint L'Ouverture kind of takes the reins of the new provincial government that exists in Saint-Domingue. They are still a part of the French Empire, however, they now have had their demands met. So, and L'Ouverture ends up switching sides during the Saint-Domingue, ends up supporting the French, helps fend off the British and the Spanish, right? That's why, actually, in the Dominican Republic, next to Haiti, on current day, the Isle of Hispaniola, right? That's actually why they are still currently over there, because actually the people from the Dominican Republic, the Spanish, actually were the ones that gave him his officer commission, right? But this is to be continued, all right? So now, to quell the rebellion that is blowing up in Saint-Domingue, right, Haiti, it's actually, they're going to outlaw slavery, right? And we talk about later on how Napoleon actually, really, really quick, let's just go ahead and get there, right? So, just jot this down really quick somewhere. Napoleon, when he comes to power, actually begins to fear that L'Ouverture is actually destroying the economy within Haiti, and he actually sends military to the shores of Haiti to actually take it over completely and reassert French control. And during this whole process, a lot of his soldiers actually end up dying from malaria and yellow fever. And Toussaint L'Ouverture actually lives, but at a meeting where he was supposed to actually discuss the new rights of the people in Haiti, he was captured and shipped to the Alps with his entire family, where he died in 1803, right? So later on, his assistant, Jean-Jacques Dessalines, is going to actually lead the Haitians to full revolt. And in 1804, Napoleon just lets it go. It's like, it's not worth the profit that we were gaining off of it. How about we just, like, reassert ourselves in Louisiana and then sell it to the Americans for a lot of money, right? So Saint-Domingue ends up actually liberating itself completely. And then we had this thing, the Thermodorian reaction and the Directory, right? So the Thermodorian reaction and the Directory is a very important ending phase of the violent phase of the revolution, right? So Robespierre is growing extremely paranoid, right? Kind of like a Stalin-esque kind of paranoia, where he believes that everyone is out to get him. Anytime he was ever criticized, a lot of those people were oftentimes sent to the guillotine, right? Even one of his closest friends, Danton, the guy that looks like a toad that actually called people they were from the marsh, one of his closest allies, he had him executed. He actually had him executed for receiving bribes, apparently, and actually taking money from the revolution. So he has him executed along with all of Danton's supporters. Now, remember we said that the Reign of Terror changed the way that time was kept? Well, in the new French calendar, on the date of 9 Thermidor, the month of Thermidor, on the date of 9 in year 2 since the revolution is supposedly having started, right? So, and the French First Republic, they actually started keeping different years, as in, like, we actually only go by the years since the French First Republic. Conspirators are going to arrest Robespierre and his allies after chasing him out of the National Convention. And before he was actually captured, Robespierre got shot in the face. Some people say, actually, that Robespierre claimed that he was trying to shoot himself in the face, and then he tried to, like, flinched, and it, like, the bullet went into his mouth and out the other side. But actually, there was a man there that claims that he shot Robespierre himself. But the Thermidor regime ends up softening up these economic controls. They end up having max executions of the Committee of Public Safety, sympathizers, and the people are going to just begin to grow tired of the violence. And so the National Convention decides to try and create a bicameral government with them as the legislative branch, and then they elect a very weak 5-man executive branch known as the Directory, right? So they tried to take dictatorial power, but the Directory itself being so weak and only surviving till about 1795, 1795 or 1799. It's one of those two. I'll look it up. They're overthrown by this guy. You know, the man himself, Napoleon, right? And then we're going to have a second flip on all the Napoleon stuff, right? So I will see you guys later. Remember, the Napoleon stuff will only be on the essay for the midterm. I'll see you guys after a while. Y'all have a good one.